All right, another episode of the Square and Compass podcast. Happy to be finally getting more of these long form podcast interviews on. And I am with Brother Soap, Brother Stanley Omar Amos Payne of the Grand Lodge of Texas. He is a member of the Merchandise Committee, which is something we're going to talk about. It's one of the things I don't see a lot of people talking about in the Masonic podcast space is merchandise, which I think is something, it might be a bit of a lost opportunity for a lot of lodges. But first, Brother Payne, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure and honor.
So, one thing I wanted to talk about, and we just talked about this before I hit the record button. One thing I love about doing these podcasts and traveling and visiting with other brothers is you learn things you didn't, you learn things you didn't already know in regards to um, different jurisdictions, right? So I was going to call you a second ago, right, worshipful brother Payne, because your past is a DDGM. But then you told me that what I find super interesting is I don't want to say the term lose. That's not the right term. But in Texas, you don't keep your honorifics once you are no longer a DD. So you're back to Brother Payne. Same thing with
Absolutely.
Master, right? That's really
Absolutely.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes, there's no such thing in Texas as a past DDGM. I am always going to be District Deputy Grand Master of 2021 for Masonic District 14G, but being it's no longer 2021, I'm just Brother Stanley.
That's really. Do you know any other jurisdictions that do that? Because this is the first I've heard of it, but I'm sure there must be others.
No, I would assume there's others, but I know like in New Mexico, the Grand Master once he leaves the Grand East is still referred to as most worshipful. In Texas, once the Grand Master leaves the East, he's right worshipful brother rather than most worshipful brother.
That is really cool. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. So, we were talking about this offline, right? The way I don't, to be perfectly honest, I don't remember how we first met. I know it was during the pandemic, and it was while my lodge was doing virtual meetings, and we were trying to invite as many brothers as we could from different jurisdictions to take advantage of the technology, right, and what Zoom allowed us
Absolutely.
to do.
Yes.
And I remember you came to a few of those, and it was great having you. Um, but so I can't quite place when we first met, but I know the first time I got to meet you in person, it was while you were performing your duties as a merchandise committee member at
That's
a
correct.
at a installation, if I recall correctly. Um,
It was
but
Web
tell me.
Masonic Lodge. That's correct. Cameron, I'm not hearing your audio.
Oh, sorry about that. I just
There
hit
you
the mute
go.
button by mistake. I'm not going to edit that out because the mistakes make it seem more real, and I'm too
All
lazy.
right.
Tell me about the merchandise committee. Like, what is that? Because I don't know a lot of Masonic jurisdictions that have a merchandise committee per se. So just tell me what the committee is and what its responsibilities are.
Absolutely. So the merchandise committee is in charge of handling the um, sales and facilitation of getting merchandise for the Grand Lodge out to the various lodges, whether that be through Grandmasters conferences or at special functions for lodges, such as their anniversary, such as 100-year or 150 or what have you. And also, whenever there is a Grandmaster's banquet, we tend to try to show up to those events. I also show up at MWSA meetings, which is meetings for masters, wardens, and secretaries. They get together in their various districts to communicate between lodges and keep their district functioning efficiently and communication going across lines. And then any other events, such as in Texas, we have a committee on work, and committee men who are on the committee on work go out to several lodges and have a foreman exam, which goes over the catechism of the Texas work, and certificates are issued to those brethren who are able to pass those forums or those exams rather. And but I can go into that later if you want more information. But I try to show up at any event that I have possible in my general area, which is in the North Texas area, and set up. Now, the way the Grand Merchandise Committee started, I'm told, was back in the mid 80s, maybe 1987, somewhere in that area. The Grandmasters prior to that time had a coin that they would create, and each Grandmaster every year gets to create their own design, and that emblem that they create gets stamped on a coin, and then that's given out to the brethren or sold, whatever the circumstance may be. Um, and so originally there was just the coin, and then I guess also the Grandmasters at the time had ties for the Grand Lodge line and their district deputies. And people started asking, we'd like to get either tie or something besides the coin. And so I'm not exactly sure who the Grandmaster was at the time, but the Grandmaster during 87, 88, somewhere in that area, decided, okay, well, let's put something together. And they created ties for the general members to be able to wear. And then they had requests for belt buckles and pins. And so that type of thing was created. I'm not sure how far back the pins go, but the belt buckles and knives and things of that nature came a little bit after, and that we just started experimenting with it. And after a while, brethren started to really enjoy the value that bringing that merchandise to them had.
Yeah, and we talked about this even most recently in person when I was down at the Masonic Family Day. Um, there are I think most Grand Lodges, most Masonic jurisdictions have pins or coins, or the Grand Master will have something yearly that they create. Some have shirts and you know uh, different designs. I don't know of many jurisdictions, or any, to be honest, that have just the number of items that Texas has, and the actual, like, having a committee behind it. Um, I think that's a
Absolutely.
really unique thing about Texas Freemasonry. What is your? Yeah, I know you talked about it before, but how did you first get involved in the committee? And what has your experiences been like? When you're traveling, what's the experience like for Masons looking to buy things and just or support the Grand Lodge? What's that experience been like for you?
So it's been amazing. When I first started out, as I mentioned, I was made district deputy grand master in 2021 under Most Worshipful King Curry at the time, who's Right Worshipful King Curry now. And the past chairman of the merchandise committee is a member of my lodge, which is Thomas B. Hunter Lodge number 1356 in Grand Prairie. And uh, being I was district deputy, I knew I had specific responsibilities as district deputy, but I also wanted to try to go a little further and do something extra. And so I asked around, and Don Kiesler, who was the past chairman who was on the committee still, mentioned he would give me some of the merchandise to take around with me and sell. And so I did that. One thing that we do here in Texas is we ask all of our district deputies to take around uh, coins and pins of the Grand Master and try to either sell them or give them out to people in their districts so that people can see the design and appreciate that. I mean, one of the things we do with the coin is in the EA There's I don't know about where you are, but there's talk about a coin, and so we actually give our entered apprentices a coin of the Grand Master to keep for themselves. Now they're not allowed to keep any other Masonic jewelry, but that's something that we give them just as a memorabilia of their year being made entered apprentice. And then when they become Master Masons, we try to give them a pin of the Grand Master so that they can have that to commemorate their year as being raised to the Sublime Degree of Master Mason. And as I said, I was doing extra merchandise when I was district deputy, and I guess I was doing a good job, and so I got made a committee man in addition to being district deputy my year in 2021.
And you've just explained to everybody why you never do a good job at anything.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, Specifically, though, I can run down many of the items we have just so brethren are aware of what exactly Texas carries. We have tie chains, lapel pins, tie bars, cufflinks and button covers that they can use whenever they go to formal events with their tuxes. We have a bronze coin, an enamel coin, and a silver coin. And the silver coin is actually made of 0.999 pure silver, 1 troy ounce. We have large belt buckles, small belt buckles. We have a commemorative knife set that comes with a pin and a coin, and then we also have one that comes with a silver coin. We have bolo ties that we sell. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of what a bolo tie is, but I can get more into that if you need it. We have car emblems that brethren
It's
can put
the
on their
sorry,
car.
it's the string tie, right? The bolo ties.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And we have car emblems that brethren can put on their cars, stickers that are a similar emblem of the Grandmaster. We have tail light decals that they can put on their tail lights that are a square and compass, and also we have a past master's emblem if they're a past master. We have hats, shirts, and ties. In fact, this year we have a blue tie, a red tie, and a black tie, and then we have blue slipper pins and blue slipper stickers. And for those who may not be aware, the blue slipper alludes to the lesson in the EA that talks about the Book of Ruth. And so that's what that emblem signifies. I can't even say the word, but anyways, it's for our ladies to show that their significant other is a Mason, but it allows them to put a sticker on their car or wear a lapel pin so that if they're somewhere in need, a Master Mason who may be around can see that they're connected to the Masonic family and would help them without too much question.
Yeah, my mom, she recently passed away, but like I'm a Mason and my dad is a Mason. And when I was in Texas for the family day, I actually purchased one of the blue slipper pins,
Okay,
and I put it in her care home while she was there. So
good.
I never seen that before. I posted it on Facebook as well, and it was about a 50-50 split amongst my Masonic friends of who had heard of it before and who hadn't. But I thought it's
Okay.
um, a really, really cool thing that Texas produces. And I was happy. It was just kind of happenstance and good luck that I was able to find it in Texas and then bring it back to Winnipeg and put it in her care home. So thank you, Texas, for that. But
Absolutely. Well, there have been many stories that I've heard myself where brethren will put them on their daughter's cars when they go off to college, and the daughter ends up broken down on the side of the road, and a Master Mason will inevitably stop to assist them and get them going down the road. So it's been a great thing for our ladies.
what would you say is the at least in your experience when you're uh, at an event selling these items, what would you say is the best seller or gets the most interest from those in attendance?
Well, that depends on the audience. In Texas, we have I'm sure just as anywhere, when you're in your bigger cities, your urban lodges are going to care more about ties and um, cufflinks and things of that nature. And when you get in your rural lodges, they care more about the coin and bolo ties and hats. So it just depends on where I go, but I know, most of the time, most brethren looking to pick up a coin of the Grandmaster so that they can have a coin in a pin. But it varies from location to location what people pick up.
And are the items that you listed available? Like, if somebody wanted to get them, order them, can they order them online? Can they contact you?
Absolutely, they can get online and go to the Grand Lodge of Texas. We have a store on our Grand Lodge of Texas website, and they can order them immediately. There's a shipping fee, obviously, but they can order them, and the Grand Lodge be happy to mail that out.
So, what's your experience been like? I'm assuming, although it would be kind of interesting if this would have happened, but I'm imagining that you know you're not setting up displays or selling items outside of the jurisdiction of Texas for merchandise.
No.
Although it'd be neat if you ever did. I mean, it'd be just thinking to myself and kind of off the top of my head, even events here in Ontario at the Windsor Masonic Temple, if we had an event here, but we had a booth set up with items from the Grand Lodge of Texas, would be really interesting for the brothers. But on the flip side, when you have, say, brothers visiting from out of jurisdiction, whether it be like myself or brothers coming down, and they see the merchandise tables and they learn about the Grand Lodge Committee, what's the response been like from visiting brethren, or out of jurisdiction or out of towners?
Most of them have been like you and are surprised at how much variety of items that we have, because in their jurisdiction they usually only have one or two things. I know from myself, when I was deputy grandmaster, I visited in the jurisdiction in North Carolina, and I actually got to go to a grandmaster's conference in North Carolina, and I gave the grandmaster of North Carolina items of Most Worshipful Curry at the time, and I gave him a pin and a coin, and I think that may have been it. I may have given him something else, but he turned to me and said, "Sorry, the only thing we have here in our jurisdiction is pins." And I said, "Well, it's a gift. I wasn't expecting anything in return, obviously." But he was also, the grandmaster there was surprised at the items that we had, because I took a few with me. I just went to vacation in North Carolina at the time. But that's the biggest thing, is how many items we offer. Now, one thing I should have said earlier, just for the brethren listening, everyone on the committee, it's a volunteer thing. No one gets paid anything. All the money I make gets sent into Grand Lodge directly. So I don't get any money, number one. And number two, everywhere I go is on my dime. I mean, I can turn in expenses and, I get reimbursed maybe gas, but that's about the maximum of it. So I'm doing all this on my own time.
I I do want to touch briefly. I wrote about this. We also, in a shameless plug, Square and Compass has a Medium page where we kind of write about Freemasonry and our Masonic experiences. And I wrote a couple weeks ago now, and I'll leave a link maybe in the description, about my experiences visiting Texas, which has always been an absolutely amazing. I'm sure it's just an amazing place to visit, but for me in particular, it's amazing Masonic jurisdiction. And I've always had a great time. I know that you guys down there are just coming off of your Grand Lodge annual communication. Everything I've seen from it in terms of the pictures to, the posts have all been super positive. First, from the merchandise side of things, how was it? Were you there as part of the committee? Were you guys selling, Grand Lodge items, and how did that go? And then also, just what's your experiences been like coming, on the other side of Grand Lodge now and kind of building up to the 2024-2025 Masonic year in Texas?
So, Grand Communication is always a big undertaking for the merchandise committee. We create or have created all the items for the incoming Grand Master uh, before the Grand Communication starts, and we actually start selling that merchandise on the first day of Grand Lodge. And this year was interesting because the person who was assumed to be Grand Master did not become Grand Master. So we were selling items for someone who's not going to be Grand Master. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. But we spend, I'm told, somewhere between $50,000 on merchandise. And we try to have that ready for whenever the Grand Master is installed so that everyone can wear the new Grand Master's memorabilia and paraphernalia. And so, like I said, it's a big undertaking and all that. And we start probably the Monday before Grand Communication, which starts on the actual Grand Communication starts on Friday. We have the day before on Thursday where our dignitaries are introduced, but the actual business of Grand Lodge doesn't actually start until Friday, where we start voting on resolutions and all that kind of thing. But nonetheless, like I said, we started on Monday, and Brethren put all that stuff together and put it out so that we're ready to go the Thursday of Grand Lodge and start selling immediately.
And then how did sales go, just in general? I mean, because I know you mentioned you have the Grand Masters and or expected items, but I know, because I know you're not just selling those, you're selling all of the items you mentioned before, and you have visitors coming in for Grand Communication. So just how was it in general in terms of?
Oh, it was great. I mean, a lot of times we make up the cost of what we've bought at our Grand Communication, so that the rest of the year, that's extra money that goes into the Grand Lodge operating fund and keeps our Grand Lodge going. But like I said, I had plenty of sales, and even with the issue with another Grand Master becoming Grand Master, we still sold plenty in the way of merchandise. And this is something we try to get done every year so that brethren are able to come here. A lot of times, from year to year, we have different brethren who show up. Many times it's because someone has become worship master or master of their lodge for the first time, and each master gets a vote for their lodge. The way Texas is set up is technically the master and wardens get a vote, but the master is the one who makes the vote. And so our lodges are asked to figure out how they want to vote for the resolutions beforehand, and then the master does the actual voting during the communication. So there's lodge votes, and then every past master gets their own vote. And so you have a combined lodge vote and past master votes that make up the Grand Lodge.
And yeah, like I said, I had seen everything I saw coming out of Grand Lodge. It seemed as though it went very, very, very well. And everybody was talking about the attendance. And like I had written and like I've said a million times, I've always loved visiting Texas, and I loved it. I was going to say this year, but I guess I loved it last year at the Texas Family Day, Masonic Family Day.
Right.
I didn't get a chance to meet the Grand Master at that time. I know he was there, but he was obviously super swamped.
Right.
I did, hear him speak for a few minutes, and he seemed like a really nice guy, and I was really impressed with the Masonic Family Day. And then the year before, visiting Gonzales, Texas, getting the chance to meet then the Grandmaster Brad Billings, and he was super nice and kind to meet with him. And then being there before at Webb and Euless and all that. So I've always had a really great time in Texas, meeting with all the brothers. And so I was happy to see that the Grand Lodge went as well as it did, and that it was well attended. And yeah, it seems like there's a lot of positive momentum coming right now out of Texas Freemasonry, which is well deserved because Texas Masons are a great group of guys.
Good. Well, so another thing on the merchandise committee, we're always looking for ideas from the brethren as far as things that they would like, and I like this year we sold a notebook that had I say this year, it was actually last year. We had a notebook. It was a kind of a portfolio that had a notepad inside of it, and we actually sell that ever so often. Every grandmaster gets to determine for themselves when they would like to what items they would like the merchandise committee to sell. And last year's grandmaster uh, decided to have a portfolio, but I know prior to that, I think the last one was maybe 3 or 4 years before. So there's items that we bring up from time to time at Brethren Special Request, just see if we can make it work and see how well it does. I know there was a lot of brethren who liked the portfolio, and we sold a lot of them, but I don't remember exactly how many sold. So that'll probably be an item that we don't. I mean, obviously, we didn't have it this year for 2024, and we may not have it again for a couple years. And there's other items in the past that have been like that, where we try and experiment and see how well it'll do, and if it does well, then we keep bringing it back.
How would I'm assuming anybody can make suggestions, but I would imagine it would, Texas Masons would have more of a say in the
Absolutely.
suggestions. But where is there an email address, or how do they make those suggestions?
Well, normally we just kind of take that from us committee men going out and selling, and if someone mentions something, then I'll send it up the chain of command, and whoever above my pay grade will look into it and see if that's something that we can make fit logistically.
And I think one of the kind of most important things, how do I put this correctly? I'm trying to think of the right terms, because I think sometimes this can sound incorrect. I with Square Company's promotions and stuff like that, I try to create some merchandise, right? And I think one of the biggest strengths of merchandising and having, especially in Texas, having so many items, is it's a really good way to create a relationship between the Grand Lodge and lodges and Masons between each other, right? The giving of gifts, the giving of a coin, the giving of a pin, whatever it is, right? Between from a master to an entered apprentice, or the blue slipper going from a father to a daughter, right? It's I talked to somebody who is a local. She produces gift packages, and she did some for Square Income's promotions, and she was talking about giving of gifts is a really good way to create a sense of not obligation, that's remember, but a sense of relationship,
Absolutely.
right? And I think that that is really one of the key things, and why I'm so impressed with the work that Texas is doing when it comes to the merchandising, right? Which is it's a thing you can hold, that you can wear, that you can have on your shelf, that helps to create that relationship between the Mason and his lodge, the Mason and his Grand Lodge. And so I really think that's the most special thing, right? Is that relationship that you're helping to develop um, with the
Well,
merchandise committee.
Well, in Texas, we've been fortunate. And number one, I mean, we have over 60,000 Master Masons, which that some jurisdictions don't even have a quarter of that. So just by the number of size, we have a big audience that we can sell to. And then number two, Texas is fortunate because as the Republic of Texas was created, a lot of the brethren who work vital to the creation of the Republic of Texas were also Masons. Sam Houston, Maribel B. Lamar, all of the presidents and vice presidents of the Republic of Texas were Masons, and so Masonry has had a big impact in this state, even when people may not have been aware of that. So we haven't had to worry about hiding our square and compass, if you will, where other jurisdictions may have had to face a challenge, either it be because of the Morgan affair or other things that our northern brethren have had to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times historically and now in different parts of the world, right, where it's been disadvantageous to be a Mason, or at least publicly be a Mason,
Right.
depending on where you are. And you know, Nazi Germany is kind of the one that a lot of people know of, but in modern times, even in modern, right, there's certain places where it's where it's illegal. Thank heavens we live in, or we live in North America, where we're free to display our square and compasses, and we don't have to worry about those things. Sometimes you might get sideways looks from people who
Right.
have some certain preconceived ideas about Freemasonry, but I always take that as an opportunity to if somebody, because I'm pretty open about being a Mason, and I have some square and compasses and square and compass shirts, and if somebody's looking at the symbols funny, it's always, I think, a good opportunity to kind of talk to them and maybe try to assuage any misconceptions that they might have about it. But I understand some Masons don't like to do that and like to keep their Masonic experience private, which is fine too, right? Everybody can kind of decide for themselves how they want to
Well,
to display that.
it's definitely varied, obviously, and then even with Texas being more open and not having to worry a whole lot about it, I mean, we still have to worry about common everyday people we run across. I mean, you look at myself. Growing up, my mother was an anti-Mason. And when I went to college, I joined college fraternity Sigma Phi Epsilon. And when I got into Sigma Phi Epsilon, I realized many of the things that she would say about the Masonic Lodge could also be said about Sigma Phi Epsilon, because we had meetings that were closed door, and we did whatever, and that got my interest after college to join the lodge. And once I got involved, I realized that she didn't know what she was talking about, and it's unfortunate that she doesn't want to change her position, and that's okay. She's entitled to her position, but I wish that she would not worry about things that her preacher or anybody else says, and just look at what her experience is. And I'm not a person who gets out and tries to defend Masonry. But I'm a Sunday school teacher at my church, and I have to worry about when I'm teaching what I have on me. Not because I'm not proud of Freemasonry, but because of when I'm at church, that's about church. Now, I have a square and compass on my keychain. I have a belt buckle that has square and compass on it, but I'm not flashing that to everybody. It may be under my jacket or whatever, because again, when I'm at church, that's about church. But when I'm not, they see me. People from my church see me when I walk in parades. I'm unapologetic about being a Freemason, and I'm proud of it, and I do it whenever I need to. But again, we never know who we're going to run across, and we just have to be careful about that.
No, yeah, being careful is always important, and I think everybody kind of um I don't think it's a Masonic thing. It's just everybody kind of struggles with how compartmentalized your life can be. What like, you have your family, you have your spiritual life, you have your work life, you can have your Masonic life, right? You have your recreational life and things you do for fun, and how much does each thing bleed into the other, right?
Right.
I kind of like the way you described it, right? Like when you're at church, it's church. That's how I always try to do it as much as I can in the sense of like when I'm involved in Freemasonry, I try to be 100% involved in Freemasonry, and then when I'm involved in wrestling, I try to be 100% involved in wrestling, and when I'm a friend, I try to be one. You're always trying to like at any given moment be the best version of whatever it is that
Right.
you're being, right? If that makes
Absolutely.
any sense at all. The what's next for you? What any upcoming events where you'll be representing the merchandise committee, or just in your Masonic career in general? What's coming up for you?
So next weekend, the Grandmaster is going to have a conference at Hella Shrine in Garland, Texas, and I'll be setting up a table there. Don Keesler will be assisting me. So that's the next event. After that, on the 23rd and 24th, we'll be having officer leadership training at the Fort Worth Masonic Temple, and the next weekend, I don't remember if it's another Grandmasters conference in Fort Worth. I believe it's another Grandmasters conference in Fort Worth. And then I'm headed to Quanah, Texas, which is a little bitty town in northwest Texas, to have merchandise. It'll form an exam given by Right Worshipful Steve Peppers, and that's all I have in my brain right now. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I'm always involved in something. And then I'm also an active York Rite and Scottish Rite Mason, and so I'm past, I think, as you would call it in Canada, first principal of chapter and council. I'm the current commander of Arlington Commandery number 107, and I'm actively involved with the Scottish Rite. We have a reunion coming up in March, and we do all 29 degrees over 3 days, and so I'm always involved with something. That's why I don't often get to join your virtual meetings, because I'm usually attending something.
Yeah, although we haven't had one in a while. That's one of I definitely think I dropped the ball. I'll even say Masonry dropped the ball on this one. I not to go on a tangent, but I will. I was a big big proponent of virtual meetings during the pandemic. I think I've said it before, but since I've joined Masonry in 2007, and one of the best decisions I think our Grand Lodge in Ontario made was maybe the best decision they ever made was when they allowed for virtual meetings during the pandemic. They said no ritual during the meetings, which meant you didn't have to tell the meetings,
Right.
which meant you could bring in guest speakers who weren't Masons but had Masonic knowledge of some sort, or historians, or you could do, we did a virtual beer and cheese tasting where we sent out packages of beer and cheese to people who were participating. And then we had the tasting led by the local brewery. And, you know, but also even if you were bringing in Masons, right, you could bring in Masons from Texas, from Scotland, from all around the world to either just be part of the fellowship or to actually do a presentation. And I was really really proud of the virtual meetings that Harmony, where I'm secretary, Harmony Lodge put on. We had some really great turnouts, some really great speakers. And one of my, when we were allowed to have in-person meetings again, at first it was exclusively, the only people allowed to attend were people who could show proof of vaccination. Um, and you had all sorts of rules and requirements about what you could and couldn't do and social distancing. So we were able to maintain the virtual meetings for a little while after, but as the restrictions lessened, less and less people, and I found this across jurisdictions, became interested in virtual meetings now that they had the in-person back to as it
Sure.
was before, which I think is a real shame because I tried my best to keep them going because I thought they provided a really good opportunity. And there are the Grand Lodge Education Committee does some virtual meetings here, and they're great. But I wish more lodges had maintained virtual with the in person, because I think virtual meetings do have a really valuable place, not as a replacement for in person, because Freemasonry first and foremost has to be about in person meetings, but there is a value to them. So
Absolutely.
I'm just going to throw
Absolutely.
this out there to the Masonic internet community. Don't give up on virtual meetings. There's a place for them, and if you can work them into your lodge and get the brothers interested, it can be a really valuable tool.
I think something that is important on this very topic is for lodges to at least once a month, if they can, or at least quarterly, if they would have just a virtual, hey, how are you? So that brethren who aren't able to come lodge might have an avenue to be able, at least able to see people's faces.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've got brothers who might be sick, or just could have traveled out of jurisdiction, or in the case of Texas or Ontario, they might still be in jurisdiction, but our jurisdiction's so big, it doesn't mean much,
Right. Right.
You're not going from, it's gonna be quite the challenge to get from, say, Houston, Texas to Fort Worth, Texas for a meeting. So, virtual, there's a place for them. So yeah, I agree. I hope lodges start to look at that again. And you know, it seems unfortunate, and this isn't a Masonic thing, this is a human thing. It seems that very often it takes some type of calamity or crisis, such as in this case COVID, to force people to try something new and to try to change. And then when that calamity or crisis goes away, we're far too quick to kind of revert back and not take some of the lessons learned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I thought another thing that I thought was great about the COVID situation is there's many brethren who are interested in finding out just other topics that are mildly connected with masonry, but you just want to know about something different, and that the virtual meetings gave an opportunity for brethren to be able to listen to meetings where they got to hear about items that they never hear talked about in their own lodge, whatever that may be. I know in my own case, philosophy is something that is interesting to me. The brethren in my home lodge aren't that big on philosophy, and that just gave me an avenue to look into other philosophies that people wanted to talk about, not as a means to proselytize me, agreeing with them, but just to hear something new that I'd never heard, and be able to get some value out of it.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, look at this, right? What's happening right now, right? This kind of was born from meeting virtually during the pandemic, and you attending some of those virtual meetings. So as I cough up a
Bless you.
lung, maybe I'm good friends with the master. Maybe we'll try it again in harmony. Who knows? But I'd encourage everybody to give it a shot, and I would encourage every Grand Lodge that might be listening. Think about, perhaps if you don't have one, or if you have one but it's kind of focused on one item, think about learning from Texas and looking at maybe developing some type of merchandise committee. I suspect, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I suspect that the merchandise committee would be more than happy to speak with other Grand Lodges about how they've gone about their work, and if any Grand Lodges have questions about how to start their own committee. Um, it's worth looking into, because I remember in web, the number of items that you guys had available, and it added something extra special to the event, to not just have Grand Lodge present, but to have those items there, and to see that the care with which they were made and the display being set up. I thought it was a really nice extra touch. So yeah, learn from Texas in this case, and consider maybe creating your own committee.
Well, I can tell you, and I need to give a shout out to Robert Riley, who's the chairman of the merchandise committee. I know he's happy to talk to anybody, and He's a wealth of knowledge. So is Don Kiesler, who's the past chairman of the merchandise committee. There's many of us. I don't know that much about logistics on this kind of thing, but I'm, if somebody's got something to sell, I'm happy to put it out so that I can provide value to the brethren.
All right, and with that, thank you so much, Brother Soap, Brother Stanley, Omar, Amos, Payne, not just for being here, but for all you do for Freemasonry. I know you do a lot. And even all the way up here, a little bit north of you, it's much appreciated. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, and it was a pleasure speaking with you, Cameron.